Nowadays, from boomers to millennials, most people are well aware of the dangers of hidden propaganda embedded in the media that they consume. And most people are pretty sick of the hidden agendas and the politicization of their enjoyment time.
Right now, there is a whole, an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this too. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. This is mass madness, you maniacs. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off.
Some people approach it from the aspect of, oh, I don't want nothing to do what Hollywood's doing over there. It's very strange stuff. Hey, why do you keep showing me these particular stories with these particular narratives in the same repetitive formula? It makes you wonder.
Propaganda is biased information or disinformation that is presented to us to shape the way that we see the world. And propaganda comes from two main sources, the government and the media, and these often collude. Misinformation is incorrect information, right? Disinformation is incorrect information on purpose, specifically presented to you to change the way you see things.
Now, the elite media are the sort of the agenda-setting media. That means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the major television channels, and so on. They set the general framework. Local media more or less adapt to their structure. They determine, they select, they shape, they control, they restrict in order to serve the interests of dominant elite groups in society.
The more research you do, the more you start to realize, actually, this is the original re-education tool. This is the original social media. This is the original echo chamber. And that is one of the reasons why people are not only seeking escapism from their actual life, but escapism from the torture of the same kind of media tyrants.
Despite what you might be thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right, please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what do we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts. Just imagine, as a child, you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people were taught that lie, that the blue circle is larger than the red, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition.
In the UK, under 50% of people between 16 and 24 have stopped watching TV. I think they watch it about once a week, whereas in 2018 it was a lot more. There is about a 1% increase in boomers watching more TV in about the 75 plus age range, but you can't blame them for watching TV because what else have they got to do, in all honesty? But it's us in the middle, those Gen Xers and those millennials, that are looking around and saying, we did grow up with TV and radio and traditional formats of media, but we also had a significant period of our lives with this thing called the internet. And what came with the internet was access to information that wasn't available via traditional media sources. The beauty of that is the connection of people all across the world. A bit of knowledge from here, a bit of information from there, a bit of on the ground news here. Most people in 2025 are more likely to get their news from a social media feed than a traditional media platform. Now that is a good thing in some ways, but it's a bad thing in other ways.
Podcasters are journalists, influencers are reporters, keyboard warriors are experts, and this is where most people get their news from. Says who? A new survey on news consumers. It found that 54% Americans got their news online from Facebook, from X, or from YouTube. This is higher than television. 50% for television, 48% for websites and news apps. So simply put, social media is now the top source of news in America. It has overtaken television and websites.
Personally, I think it's a good idea to still have some regard for traditional media sources when it comes to things like journalists and the Associated Press and things like that, because those people actually fought for the right to be able to go out into the world, find stuff out and report back to the people. That was their main objective way back in the day.
Risking his own business, risking his own future, risking his own liberty, by insisting that this country should have the high explosive shells which the government wasn't manufacturing and which Kitchener didn't like. This is our freedom. This is the freedom of the public. Insofar as the press, without fear of advertisers or big business or governments, expresses and stands up for that freedom, it does its duty. Insofar as it, or any person on it, being a member of Parliament or not, connives at, admits, bows down to, any curtailment of that freedom to speak the truth, to ascertain it and to make it known, insofar that person or those persons be helped to betray the freedom of this country.
the First Amendment and the press is that it prevents the government from censoring the press. For the most part, this means preventing the press from publishing some information in the first place, although it can also mean punishing a news agency after they publish something. The Supreme Court agreed that no government was allowed to censor the press because a free press is essential for the political system to work. Citizens need a free press to be able to criticize the government and to expose government wrongdoing, because otherwise the government can get away with all sorts of things that we don't want it to, like say spying on us and reading our email. Of course, even with a free press, the government can do this, and what constitutes the press in the age of the internet is a debatable question. American democracy relies on its citizens having enough information to make good decisions and hold elected officials accountable. We rely on the press to tell us what the government is doing so that we can decide whether or not we want to let them keep doing it. If the government can keep us from getting important or even not so important information by censoring the press or by preventing us from speaking out against what we see as wrong, it will be able to keep doing things that might be bad. And this is the kind of tyranny that the framers of the Bill of Rights were most worried about.
At some point during history, that freedom of press kind of got hijacked and became not the voice of the people, but the voice of the government, the voice of the corporates, the voice of the sponsor, the voice of the advertiser. And it stopped being, here's what's happening and here's what we want you to see. And a lot of people are starting to become aware of that.
At the Iranian embassy this morning, there was some sort of brawl between some sort of protesters from different groups, and the Daily Mail and multiple other outlets reported it as attack at the Iranian embassy, 2 pro-Palestinian protesters taken to hospital. Now wait, what? I posted a video about this, and then by the time I posted the video, it changed to this: 2 pro-Israel protesters taken to hospital. They had like an entire article before about the incident, and then the entire article just changes from pro-Palestinian to pro-Israeli.
If the press is a censoring organisation, tell me how that works. You're not suggesting that proprietors phone one another up, or that many journalists get to their copy spiked, as we say?
It's actually, Orwell, you may recall, has an essay called Literary Censorship in England, which was supposed to be the introduction to Animal Farm, except it never appeared, in which he points out, look, I'm writing about a totalitarian society, but in free democratic England, it's not all that different. And then he says, unpopular ideas can be silenced without any force. And then he gives a 2-sentence response, which is not very profound, but captures it. He says 2 reasons. First, the press is owned by wealthy men who have every interest in not having certain things appear. But second, the whole educational system from the beginning on through just gets you to understand that there are certain things you just don't say.
You're about to turn on the TV and see, oh, here's this news person talking about this story from this point of view on the left. Here's this news person talking about this story from this point of view on the right. Now, when you switch on the internet or you go on your phone, you can actually see, oh, what's actually happening behind the camera where they're standing at the so-called crash scene. And you can see it's a fake light that's doing LED flashes. You can see they're not actually reporting on what's actually happening on the ground, because this guy here is live and he's showing me exactly what's happening on the ground, right? There's so many different aspects of truth that you have access to, or should we say there's so many more dimensions of truth that you have access to now. It's making people lose trust in these traditional medias, and that's not just on the news side, that's also in documentary making.
Let's take a single event, the UK junior doctor strike, and see what headlines look like from outlets with different interests. Remember, the goal of effective propaganda is to persuade. So let's see how these different news outlets try to get us to feel a certain way. Here are 3 headlines from 3 different groups. Same story, but take a look at how subtle wording differences can completely change our gut reaction to the event. Here we have examples of right-wing coverage, nominally centrist coverage from an outlet with a single wealthy owner, and coverage from an explicitly socialist perspective. Notice how the story is framed: patient safety, patient convenience, and the actual reason for the strike. By omitting certain details, or by giving precedence to one quote or fact over another, news outlets can frame a story in a way that nudges the reader towards a conclusion that benefits their operation, often beholden to obscenely rich individual owners or a particular flavor of economics.
Most documentaries are entertainment, not journalism. Unsolved Mysteries was middle-class fear-bathing designed to boost ratings. The coverage given to any specific segment was not bound by if the story was good journalism or if it was even true, but instead by how flashy it could seem when presented within the given format. And the way that the show ultimately accomplishes this is by structuring itself off of testimony, and then choosing to never question what is said, and presumably to leave any contradictions on the editing room floor. There isn't exactly an industry standard for documentaries to cite their sources, and yet they are traditionally treated as primary text by most people.
So forgive me if my information is not 100% accurate here. This is an opinion. It's a horrible thing when you have an institution like the BBC becoming the actual arm of the state. Why do we pay TV licenses to have narratives forced on us and not be shown the truth, right? Why would we do that?
You know, a lot of the BBC, Michael, and its political coverage, it exists to pacify the British public, to keep us stupid. And it's not just about disinformation, which this is, I think. It's also about just having a level of public conversation which is really, really low. You know, we saw Tucker Carlson a few days ago having a really high information conversation with Ted Cruz or with Steve Bannon, having a really high level conversation like, we have certain assumptions, certain ideas, and we're operating at this level. With the BBC, it's like down here, it's slop. It's slop. You would find a better answer to that question about Israeli nuclear weapons on Wikipedia or ChatGPT or a Google search using the Google AI, right? It's slop. Why should I be compelled to pay for that? Why? Well, we believe in public service broadcasting. I'm sorry. On international relations, a lot of the time, not all the time, there's some magnificent original news gathering by the BBC. Some. But for stuff like this, for the journalists based in London, putting stuff on BBC Online, going on BBC Newsnight, it's slop. Sorry, we don't need it.
It's not just a matter of being a conspiracy theorist. It's like if you put on your They Live glasses and you watch a bit of TV, you scroll through and you see, oh, why is Channel 4 showing these kind of documentaries? Oh, why is ITV doing that then? Why is BBC 3 making these stereotypical kind of mandem or like, you know, just very odd, horrible caricatures of people in Britain and in the world?
Ask yourself a question. Do you think we live in a post-racial world? If so, it would mean there are no more stereotypes, that we don't make generalizations about a particular group and have certain expectations about every person in that group.
The image imprinting begins early. These images are in children's stories and books, and they're in the animation. They are in our films and now our advertisements as well.
Mia Mask studies how African Americans are represented in movies, TV, and pop culture, and her words stick with me as I watch Dumbo now, decades after I first saw Jim Crow and his gang. Only now are some of the most dehumanizing characterizations of African Americans finally being yanked off store shelves.
So there are people who would say, look, it's just pancake syrup.
It could be just pancake syrup if we didn't believe in the inferiority of certain groups and the superiority of others.
Case in point. Birth of a Nation.
We can see the way it draws on particular kinds of stereotypes of blackness that say, listen, like if we abolish slavery, like these black folks are going to do all sorts of terrible things. So the black men are going to and pillage white women. If we allow them to be in positions of legislative authority, they are going to disrespect that kind of tradition that we have.
Depictions that can impact the future as well.
So I'm saying it seeps out beyond the popular culture. So police officers who came of age in the 90s and early 2000s learn from those films that black men are to be contained, that black men are a threat, that they threaten white neighborhoods, white women, white community.
If you have a political agenda, it's in your best interest to spin things that benefit your cause, right? If you have certain ideologies, if you have certain biases, if you like these people and not those people, of course, you're going to show them in a certain light, right? But that's become a bit too obvious now. And people are like, I don't have to listen to what you say anymore because I can look over here. Or I don't even have to watch anything in the world anymore. I can go and create my own ecosystem, my own little bubble, so to speak.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.